I would like to thank Jamal Ross for sending me this story. And let me just start off by saying if what I'm about to tell you is indeed true, this guy needs to be locked up away from society for as long as possible. This man's name is Corey Coleman, and he is now the former uh, personnel chief for FEMA. Now, FEMA as an organization just always falls as shady because I've heard some things about FEMA and the stuff that they're supposed to do, but they don't do. But anyway, this guy has basically been put under an investigation for sexual misconduct, but not on his part, so to speak. This man actually went a whole nother route. Let's just say he turned his organization into his own personal brothel. A brothel is basically nothing more than a whorehouse. And what he would do is he would hire these women to work for FEMA, but only under the guise of sending them off to have sexual relations with other male staff that work there. So it's almost like he was hiring prostitutes, of course, unbeknownst to the women. I'm going to go ahead and read this article that's coming from the Orlando Sentinel. It said the personnel chief of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, who resigned just weeks ago, is now under investigation after being accused of creating an atmosphere of widespread sexual harassment over years in which women were hired as possible partners for male employees. The alleged harassment and other misconduct revealed through a preliminary 7-month internal investigation was a systemic problem going on for years, said FEMA Administrator William Brock Long. Some of the behavior could rise to the level of criminal activity. Some of the claims about the agency's former personnel chief are detailed in a written executive summary of the investigation provided to the Washington Post. FEMA officials gave other details and confirmed that the individual under investigation, whose name was redacted from the report, is Corey Coleman, who led the personnel department from 2011 until his resignation in June. Coleman could not immediately be reached for comment, and no one answered the door at his Northeast Washington home when a Washington Post reporter visited Monday. Coleman resigned June 18th before a scheduled interview with investigators, and FEMA officials said they have not been able to question him since. Online records show Coleman was a senior executive who was paid an annual salary of $177,150. In an interview, Long described a toxic environment in the Human Resources Department under Coleman at FEMA headquarters. Starting in 2015, investigators said Coleman hired many men who were friends and college fraternity brothers and women he met at bars and online dating sites. Now, that says a lot right there. Look at how he hired the men versus how he hired the women in the environment. He hired guys that he knew personally, or from college, the fraternity brothers and things like that. These could be professional men. But these women that he hired were from bars and online dating sites. So he knew what he was doing and who and why he was hiring those women. Let me continue. He then promoted some of them to roles throughout the agency without going through proper federal hiring channels. Coleman then transferred some of the women in and out of departments, some to regional offices, so his friends could try to have sexual relationships with them, according to employee statements during interviews with investigators. What we uncovered was a systemic problem going back years. He said he was referred several of the cases to the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General, who oversees FEMA, to investigate possible criminal sexual assault. The biggest problem I may solve here may be the eradication of this cancer. How many complaints were not heard? I've got to make sure we have a safe working environment for our employees. Long said the problems extend beyond Coleman. The investigation is not going to stop with him. I'm glad they said that because I was actually going to say that toward the end. I highly doubt that he's the only person that's involved. It's just the fact that he's at the helm of it, and they're going to try their best to make, so far since he is the only one they have, he's now become the face of it. But I'm almost certain that it's other people involved as well. Long said he received a direct complaint last year from an employee who said Coleman sexually harassed her. Long forwarded to the General Counsel office, which started the internal investigation. Coleman was placed on administrative leave in April. Long is a Trump appointee who has served in his role for 13 months. FEMA officials said the DHS Inspector General Office had received complaints about Coleman in 2015 and referred them back to the agency to investigate. It's unclear what became of those complaints under the Obama administration. The Inspector General's office did not respond to a request for comment. Many of the men and women Coleman hired were unqualified, yet are still at the agency, officials said. Long said his staff interviewed 73 current and former employees and took sworn statements from 98 people. Long said many valued employees in the Human Resources Department left because Coleman's unacceptable leadership style good people who wouldn't put up with it. The preliminary investigation completed Friday found that an official described as the former chief component human capital officer had sexual encounters with two subordinates, one in 2015 and the other in 2017, continuing into this year. FEMA officials confirmed this person was Coleman. Both women accompanied him on work trips, but one had few official duties on the trips. When the first woman ended the relationship, Coleman pressured her for dates, then denied her a promotion and tried to fire her. She said she kept her job by telling him she might be willing to go on dates with him, again according to the preliminary report. When the second woman said she wanted to leave FEMA, Coleman created a position for her for which she admitted to investigators she was unqualified. He also allowed her to sometimes work from his house. Long sent an employee email Monday describing the investigation and steps he has taken to address sexual harassment, including mandatory training by an outside company, new counseling services, a new office to investigate allegations of sexual misconduct, and a team of independent contractors to look into pending claims that they may have been inadequately addressed. He said he went public about the case to be open and transparent and tell this story rather than people telling it for us. As sexual harassment has gained prominence in the Me Too era, federal agencies and the Trump administration have stepped up training for employees and pledged zero tolerance policy for perpetrators. And see, this is the thing when it comes to those trainings and everything like that. In those things like that, you're not going to have someone who has a history of probably doing something like this in their own privacy come and actually admit to you that this is the way that they are. They're not going to ruin a possible position that they can gain employment and make a lot of money, especially in his position. This man was making 6 figures annually, which means he was making a good salary total monthly. A study this past spring by the Merit System Protection Board found that sexual misconduct, while less prevalent now than the 1990s, is still commonplace in federal offices. 1 in 5 women at large agencies said they experienced some form of inappropriate behavior from a coworker or a supervisor. Nearly 9% of male employees reported similar problems, and just 8% of employees who said they were harassed believed that corrective action was taken against the perpetrators, the study found. Long said he briefed the members of Congress on the FEMA investigation Monday. Coleman was hired to work at FEMA in 2011 as a deputy personnel chief in the U.S. Secret Service, where he was chief human resources officer for the Information Technology Department. He was quickly promoted to the top job, overseeing hiring and all personnel agent policies for the 20,000 person agency and its 10 regional offices. But Long said working conditions and morale in his department were so bad that Coleman was sidelined to other offices at FEMA on 3 separate details for months at a time, and each time he was allowed back to his job. You know what's so crazy? It sounds like this guy, while black, had a little smidge of white privilege in his arsenal. Why I say that? Look at how they dealt with him. Administrative leave, he had issues on the job, and he was constantly allowed to come back and not be fired ultimately until now. Well, it doesn't really say that he's let go, just as former, so I didn't hear the word say fired in the article. But wow, this was a loaded article right here. And if it all comes out, this guy's going to be dealt with accordingly, and he should be. If everything that comes out about him is indeed true. Like, that's some sick shit. Like, you actually hired people just to pass them off to male employees just to have sex with them. And you had sex with some of them as well. The thing that got me was when he was talking about how one of the employees who came forward said that he allowed her to do some work at his house. That should have raised red flags right there. Because I'm almost certain that he didn't have her over there just to do work. At least not work for the workplace, if you get what I mean. But y'all let me know what you think down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. The links to the PayPal and Patreon will be down below. I'll talk to you in the next one.